What is up, guys? Today is a wonderful day. We've had a lot of new characters introduced that are coming up to Marvel Strike Force, so obviously I'm gonna do a throwback one. That's right, we are going to talk about, due to the new announced character upcoming in Marvel Strike Force, Hulkbuster, we are talking today about Iron Man, because you can't talk about Hulkbuster without already having a conversation about Iron Man. So, what Frosty features is a comic book background of a Marvel Strike Force character, right? So, a lot of the character models, a lot of their stories are based on the comics, not necessarily the MCU. When we do this, we keep a focus on the Marvel 616 main continuity storyline as far as the comics concerned. That is not, and I underline not, the MCU. Okay, so, I may bring up things about the MCU, but namely, the facts are from the comic book stuff. So I hope you all enjoy this. Iron Man is a very well-known character. He's been around for a long time. He's part of the original group of Avengers characters. Very, very popular character. So I'm trying to focus a little bit more on things you may not know about Iron Man over the things that you obviously know about Iron Man. So, Frosty features Iron Man. Let's go. Iron Man. Name Anthony Stark, also known as Tony Stark. Right? I also really like that drawing of him. That's pretty sick. First appearance, Tales of Suspense, number 39, 1962. So he's been around for quite a while. Once again, very, very popular character in the Marvel Universe. Powers and abilities. Technically, he has none. On another level, he has a super genius intellect. So he does not have powers. He only is really smart. He is not, I'm gonna underline this, the smartest person in the Marvel Universe. He uses his wits in a different way than some of the other smart people, but he is outranked by at least 5 other Marvel characters off the top of my head as far as intellect goes, but he has a super genius intellect among the top ranks as far as his abilities go. He focuses them in machinery and inventions. Aliases, Mark whatever. His suits are known as they're Mark 42, Mark 31, which denotes what suit he's wearing. So sometimes the comics will introduce, when he's in the thing, they'll be like, it's the new Mark 32 armor, and they won't even say Tony Stark or Iron Man. Adjective Iron Man, superior Iron Man, invincible Iron Man, immortal Iron Man. He's in everything. Also, a lot of people that fight him like to call him the Tin Man for obvious reasons. It's a fun little taunt against the impregnable Iron Man. See what I'm getting at now? I don't think there's a comic line named Impregnable, but it still works. Adjective Iron Man. Affiliations, Avengers, Illuminati, S.H.I.E.L.D., etc. These are the things you know. Iron Man has his hands in all sorts of pots. Famously with Guardians of the Galaxy as well. Iron Man is all over the place. He's a good leader type character. He shows up in all the things. So let's talk about some stuff that you may not know now. You might have already known all this other stuff. Let's see if we can tread some new territory with good old Tony Stark here. Background: New Yorker. Tony Stark is adopted, right? So in the MCU, it is not talked about. It could be, and it was retconned in 2013 that Tony Stark is actually adopted. So we, especially with the MCU and even the comics, he is the son of Howard and Maria Stark, but that is not the actual story. He is the son of Amanda Armstrong and Jude. So Jude does not have a last name. Amanda Armstrong and Jude, one is a S.H.I.E.L.D. agent. Amanda Armstrong is a S.H.I.E.L.D. agent. Jude is a Hydra agent that was posted up in S.H.I.E.L.D., who fell in love, had a kid. And then Jude gets killed, Amanda gets killed, and Howard Stark is running S.H.I.E.L.D. at the time, and he is kind of keeping tabs on the situation, and he ends up adopting Tony. So Tony is adopted. He finds that out later. Yeah, right. Like that's a nuts thing. I knew he was adopted, but I had to really kind of go back and dive into a little bit of how that actually worked. But yes, he is not the biological son of Howard Stark, like MCU really drives home. And it was retconned in the comics, so it could change in the future. Later, I'm going to talk about how I think Iron Man may come back into the MCU because of how he comes back in the comics, but we'll get there. So anyway, background, he is still a New Yorker. He was adopted in a different country, but he still was born in New York, so he still maintains that New Yorker status as far as his background. So, birth of Iron Man, changing with the times. So, Iron Man originally became, so with the MCU, once again, as I said, we talk about MCU, I'm talking about the MCU. In the MCU, we see him become Iron Man in Iron Man 1 in Afghanistan. Originally, it was written in Vietnam, so it seems to change with the time, what's going on at the time, but also, there was a period where it was an unnamed country in Southeast Asia, and then they came back again, and it's a fictional country called Siakong in Southeast Asia. So timeline, Vietnam, random place in Southeast Asia that's not named, then a fake country in Southeast Asia called Siakong, and then in the newer ones, it's Afghanistan or Siakong, and he always goes back to reflect on how he became Iron Man. He always goes back to the scene of the crime, or the scene of the iron working. So anyway, yeah. So it sort of changes with what's going on, and with comics making a big shift away from the kind of a big original characters, because I'm assuming because of the MCU. We may see Afghanistan being that final place that he ends up just because of the MCU, and they put a nice period on it and move on to a new character, which is totally fair. Brother. So he was adopted by Howard and I forgot her name. Maria Stark. We're going to go with her Maria. I said it right earlier, but he was adopted by Howard Stark. Him and his wife tried to have a son, and they had a lot of trouble with it, and he wasn't going to be born, and Howard Stark went around the world looking for doctors, got them to be born, and then immediately after being born, he started being sick and things like that. But eventually Arno Stark becomes a character. So Arno Stark is very similar to his brother, even though they're adopted. Arno Stark also takes up the mantle of Iron Man. He isn't a villain. He's more of an anti-hero type situation. Him and Tony Stark work together a lot. So check out Arno Stark. Do your own thing. I think I got a picture of him on the next slide. But he takes up the mantle of Iron Man. Him and Iron Man work together to try to make a utopia. But Arno Stark gets a little tunnel visioned, very similar to how Iron Man, regular Tony Stark does. And he sometimes oversteps, and Iron Man or Captain America, whatever, has to intervene on his attempts to make a utopia somewhere for people to thrive. So he is he for the most part, he's a hero, but he has some villain qualities like a lot of characters do nowadays. And Iron Man really shares that with a lot of the Civil War work. He does seem to overstep in what his beliefs are, and Arno is just like him in that way. Arno is also a tech genius, not quite to the level of Tony Stark, but he makes his own suits, and he shares some tech with Tony. Next, alcoholism. So in the MCU, it is very lightly hinted at that Iron Man is a drinker. He is quite the drinker. He has massive depressive disorder, which kind of pushes him to look for different coping mechanisms. So if you know anything about the comics, you know that Tony is an alcoholic. But he has massive depressive disorder in comics, like prescribed, and his coping mechanism is alcohol. So a lot of the problems that Tony brings up, that it doesn't have to do with his beliefs, it's how he's acting when he's drunk. He makes a lot of horrible decisions. He does a lot of bad things when he's drunk. Very similar to the scene in Iron Man 2 where he's kind of destroying his own house by being an idiot with a superiority complex. So yeah, just if you've read a comic, you should know about it. But if you haven't, Tony Stark is he deals with alcoholism heavily. Okay. Moving on. Look familiar? So the look of Iron Man, most people are familiar, kind of associate Iron Man with Robert Downey Jr. Fair enough, because that's how we saw him. But Tony Stark is based on a real life person, a very, very famous person who actually, I mean, he really is Tony Stark in real life, but he's based on Howard Hughes in looks and character. So Howard Hughes is I had a note. I don't have it anymore, apparently. But Howard Hughes is a director. He is a philanthropist. He is a businessman. He is a famous investor. He was a very big deal early in the 1900s. And so when Iron Man was first conceived, and they actually started, there was a point where no one knew who Iron Man was, and then they started giving backgrounds to characters in the mid 60s. They based his character entirely on that of Howard Hughes. So that's kind of a cool little thing. And the inventor came from an inventor. All right, relationships. So we've already said it was Maria Stark. Aha, I win. So relationships. Jude and Amanda Armstrong are his actual parents. Maria and Howard Stark are adoptive parents. Arno Stark is his adopted brother. Pepper? So here's the thing. So this is some more some MCU differences in comics, in canon. Marvel or Iron Man doesn't have a daughter. Morgan Stark is his daughter in the MCU. Is actually his cousin in the comics. And then also he falls in love with Pepper Potts. In the MCU, he's famously married to Pepper Potts, who becomes Rescue in the Avengers Endgame, and she's also a character in the game Rescue in Marvel Strike Force. But he falls in love with Pepper, but so does Happy Hogan. And due to a crazy series of events, Pepper Potts ends up marrying Happy Hogan, who is Jon Favreau in the movies, Happy Hogan, the security guard. She falls in love with, it's a love triangle, and she ends up marrying Happy Hogan over Iron Man, and Iron Man is not married, which is probably for good reasons. So let's talk about some notable events. So let's talk about his best suit, and let's talk about his deaths, because Iron Man is one of those characters who seems to die quite often, and he always has a reason to come back. So best suit. Iron Man is known, Tony Stark is known for obsessively making crazy suits, all sorts of different ones. Best suit, this is my opinion, but it's kind of cool, and it seems to be most people's opinion. His Mark 50 Superior Iron Man suit. So after a while, Tony Stark starts experimenting with adding liquid metal in his blood, essentially, and this suit is based off of symbiotes. So the way symbiotes work psionically with their host, where they can mold and stuff like that, he took that and he made that into an Iron Man suit. And you can even see him wear this suit under other Iron Man suits. But it is literally a suit in his bloodstream that he can control with his mind or with his mouth. It can change into any shape he wants it to. This is by far his strongest suit. It's a crazy thing. So definitely check it out. It's a Mark 50. And deaths. So Iron Man has brain deaded himself. Iron Man has been ripped in half by Thanos. Captain America has killed him. Captain Marvel has killed him. I think there's a Captain Universe kills him. There is a lot of ways Iron Man died. One thing, so I was talking about earlier how Iron Man could come back to the MCU. Iron Man dies, but Iron Man has a backup. He's like Batman, where he always has a backup. So what Iron Man has done in the comics is he has uploaded his consciousness to an AI like Jarvis, right? So like Jarvis or Friday, he's got this AI, or Edith, and so he makes a Tony Stark AI. So a easy way, listen to me, Marvel. I know that the top brass at Marvel watch my YouTube videos, and this is the time. Listen to me. All they would have to do to bring back Robert Downey Jr., because I know he's interested, is, because he could even just do it as a voice actor, is bring that AI back, right? So a lot of the time when you see Iron Man in the comics, it is an AI operating a suit that is Tony Stark. So Tony Stark does die, but he has that AI not only as a hologram, but he also James Rhodes, Rhodey, War Machine. War Machine also dies, and he essentially uploads their consciousness into new biological clones or bodies. So Iron Man dies, comes back. He can either be a hologram or he could be a clone of himself that has the consciousness downloaded, right? So there's only small lapses of memory. So even though Iron Man dies, he's always with us, right? So all we'd have to do is bring him back as an AI for Spider-Man or Riri Williams, who's upcoming, right? It'd be kind of neat to see him come back for Riri Williams, because he actually does that in the comics. And when he comes back for Riri Williams, so like I said, we were talking about Ironheart later, he comes back because she makes... So I've seen people on the internet say, oh, she made a better Iron Man suit than Iron Man did her first time. No, she didn't. She made a workable Iron Man suit at the age of 15, super genius, got the attention of Tony Stark, and then Tony sent the AI of him when he died to her, and he helped her make her Mach 2 armor, which made her into Riri Williams, or excuse me, made her into Ironheart. So the only reason why Ironheart became Ironheart at the end of the day is because of Tony Stark, and that AI. So would it be neat to see Riri Williams in the MCU get it, and then maybe Peter has that, oh, well, why didn't I get it? Blah, 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 blah. Is that a cool story thing? Maybe, right? Over all this random crap we're doing right now. But anyway, that's a cool thing I wanted to point out, that, you know, the AI version of Tony Stark, not only is it cool, it's a neat thing in the comics, but also it's a cool way to bring it back in the MCU, if possible. Let's talk about power level. So, for the sake of argument, I like to give everyone a power level. Marvel Strike Force doesn't really care about power levels. But as far as power scaling, power levels, different characters are different strengths, and let's acknowledge that. So, if you are at a multiversal power level, you can end all of reality, be it this universe or another one. You essentially have that. You have a thought, and you act on that thought, and you could end everything, right? There are very few characters at this power level. Universal, you might be able to end your universe, or maybe skip over to another one and take out another one, be a multiversal threat, but only have universal power, right? So, yeah. Cosmic, you are a threat to a planetary body, maybe or a small galaxy. Think of maybe a Galactus type. You can destroy planets. You're very strong. Nuclear, the power of a nuclear bomb, right? With a little grit and a little effort, you could take out a planet. You could destroy the entire surface of a planet with enough work on the small end. You could destroy a city, a small city, a large city. You have the power to make that sort of big block. City. So city level is the most common level in the Marvel universe. City level is you could take out a wall. So with enough effort, take down a building, maybe a city block. You could level quite a few buildings, but you may not be destroying entire cities in one blast. So good city example, Spider-Man, Daredevil, kind of things like that. And then finally, Greg. Greg is the undead Asgardian that Hela summons in Marvel Strike Force. And for the sake of the argument, I am saying that Greg is at the power of a human. So me wielding a flathead screwdriver and a trash can lid, and being very, on one of my good days, I could probably take out Greg. So Greg is, for the sake of argument, regular human power. So for Iron Man as a whole, he has nuclear power. So at any point, as we see in the MCU with Edith program, he can launch actual nukes or something similar to nukes. He has a large weapon arsenal that he has access to, which would allow him maybe to destroy a planet at max. He has a bigger influence of that due to his actions. Think about it like Captain America. Captain America doesn't have a bunch of crazy superpowers, but he has a lot of influence. Iron Man has probably the second most influence in the Marvel Universe, next to Captain America or maybe a Reed Richards, right? So even though his power level might only be nuclear, he has sort of a universal influence. He's swayed a lot of things, right? So don't take that as, oh, Iron Man sucks, he's only nuclear. No, that's where I rate his actual physical power. He has done more things, and at random times maybe he has gotten different superpowers, which has happened, or different things that may change his power level. But on the whole, on average, we find even Iron Man at his strongest suit, he is at the high end of a nuclear power. Yeah, so that's where we're at. That is Frosty Features Iron Man. Next up, we're going to do Frosty Features Hulkbuster, because Hulkbuster is what's coming to Marvel Strike Force. Iron Man's getting a rework. Let me know your favorite Iron Man facts in the comments. If I got anything wrong, if I missed something that you feel like just should have been in there, if you disagree with the power level, let me know in the comments. As a reminder, I stream every Sunday on Twitch at 8 a.m. at 8 a.m. Central Standard Time at the link above me. Come check me out. Drop your boy a like. Give me a subscribe. I really, really would appreciate it here on YouTube or on Twitch. But anyway, I hope you really liked it, and I hope you all have an amazing day. And most importantly, y'all, stay cool.